Hey everyone, it's Megan. So I read 7 books in May, and I'm going to be going over them with spoilers and how I felt about them, if I would recommend them, and what I'll be doing next month. So let's get into it. A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. This was the conclusion to the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I gave this a 4 out of 5 and 0 for spice because it was a young adult, so it really wasn't spicy in any regard. It was more just romantic in a way. This one got me back in for the finale. I was kind of like iffy for the Ballad of Never After, the one before this, but again, I just wanted to keep going to finish the series. But the plot twist in the beginning leading up was like very different and exciting, and like twists and turns, like what's going to happen next. So I was really locked in. I couldn't put it down during that time. The story really just progressed nicely throughout this book. It really didn't leave any plot holes, any snags or anything like that. It kind of wrapped itself up really nicely. And the ending was satisfying. I was like, hell yeah, let's go type of deal. The one criticism I still have is Evelyn, the main female character. Her character is just infuriating. A lot of people on Book Talk and Instagram and whatever, the book community, love her and think she's a great female character, main character in like different series. I don't care for her. I think her naivety is so infuriating and frustrating, and it doesn't really get solved. Like a character even says to her, I think it was the villain, he even says to her, like, you just jump into scenarios and you don't think. And then they tried to play it off like, oh, she's just like this hero, whatever, but no, it's just like every single time she does it, it's like, girl, why are you doing that? You're gonna hurt yourself, you're gonna get killed. Like that, you have to know better if you've been down this road a couple times. Also, Jax, the male main character, everybody loves him. There's artwork, fan art everywhere that he's like this godsend male character, and I kind of don't feel that way. I liked him, but not to that degree that he was like the next best thing since Rhysand from ACOTAR. But again, the characters were enjoyable. It was a good story. It was different. I didn't think it was going to wrap up, but it did. So I felt satisfied. So I definitely recommend this series. It was fun. And if you're trying to get into fantasy for the first time and you don't know where to start and like dip your toes in the water, this is kind of the series that I would recommend. Emberclaw by L.R. Lam. This is the second book that just came out after Dragonfall. I like Dragonfall. It was decent. It was a good start. I gave that a 3.5 out of 5, just like I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5. And I gave a 1 for spice because there was like a scene or two. And the way that they wrote those scenes was like on the romantic side, like not like really graphic and raw. Like it was just like very emotional, which I was like, okay, like this is sweet. But I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5 just because this took me a week and almost a week and a half to read. I had to like jump between 3 different books while reading this because it just was so slow. I understand that the first book was doing world building. That's totally okay with me. I understand that. But this book, it just felt like there was more world building, and I kind of felt like we already got that in the first book. We don't need it again. And it took place in like academia setting this time, and something about academia setting with no like action in between or anything like that, it dragged on and dragged on. But once it got to 3/4 of the way, it did grasp me. Like it had like a trials thing and like people dying and like it was, you know, life or death situation and gods and stuff, and it did grasp me at the end. It was just unfortunately leading up to it was just really long and slow. But I would recommend it if you're looking for a book that kind of writes very old-timey, Shakespearean, old language type of writing. I would recommend this because it was refreshing in that way. And it just, you could tell that the author put a lot of thought into the way they wrote. And I kind of had a feeling this was like, because I think the author lives in Scotland. I think it was like giving me Scottish vibes, the wording and stuff like that. So it was really cool in that regard. So yeah, I would recommend this in Dragonfall. So this is just a duology. It's short, sweet. I think total was like 650 pages all together for both books. So I'd recommend it. Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahiran. This was a huge pleasant surprise. I was recommended this by a friend. She said she saw it on TikTok that it was the next best thing, even though it was written in 2019 and that people were just kind of starting to realize it was a book. But she also told me it was young adult, and it was not young adult whatsoever. So, to anybody out there, it says on the back that it's by publisher Harper Teen. It is not teen. There's graphic stuff in here. But I did give it a 5 out of 5 for my general rating, and then a 1 out of 5 on the spice meter, because it was just kind of just getting started. And it was like emotional again and raw wording. It wasn't very crude stuff. But this plot was really good. I didn't think I would get into it as much as I did. It's about witches and witch hunters and what happens when a witch hides her identity from a witch hunter, and then they kind of get feelings for each other, and it was just really good. I don't know, like, it just had really good plot twists, like, back to back to back to back, that I kept engaged, and I couldn't stop reading this book. I couldn't put it down. Once I got to, like, a quarter of the way, I was like, we are so here. Like, I can't read anything else. Like, I finished this book and immediately almost bought the second one off Amazon, but I had to give myself a minute because I have other stuff to read. But it just, like, I don't know if this author is taking notes from Sarah J. Maas and the way that she does, like, her cliffhangers and her plot twists and stuff like that, but that's how I really felt in this book. But it had its own identity, so it didn't feel like anything Sarah J. Maas wrote. So yeah, I would 1000% recommend this book. I'm going to read Blood and Honey, which is the second one, and I'm going to read that this month, so I'm super excited. I'll let you guys know how I feel about that one next month. King of Envy by Anna Huang. So I was really excited for this. I read this with my friend in my other book club. I give this a 2.5 out of 5 stars and a 2 out of 5 spice rating. The 2 spice was for the 2 scenes we got. I could have put it lower, but I gave it a chance. But I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 just because I really felt like, I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 because I really felt like the feelings and the way that she described Ayana and Buck's character, those two characters really just didn't complement each other. I understand Buck had a disability, or he just really couldn't talk, so he used sign language or another way of communicating. But I just felt like his feelings were so valid and given and out there, and Ayana was just kind of like so trusting, so forgiving. Any other character in the situations that she was in would question herself, like, okay, I hear voices in my apartment, maybe I should just like go and call the police or like whatever, instead of standing there and then texting someone and then like walking around in your apartment like you didn't just hear voices talking in your apartment. And I just felt like it was a really too much of a slow burn for me, and even the scenes that we did get for Spice was just so vanilla, and there were parts leading up to it, like Ayana would say like, oh, I wonder what breath play is, and was Googling breath play, and like he accidentally choked her in a scene, and then she's like, I wonder what it would be like to be choked by him, and then proceeded to have the most vanilla sex scenes in the book, and it just didn't like make sense at all. There were too many plot holes and snags of things that just didn't make sense. And spoiler warning, but the end, they're captured in a warehouse and held at gunpoint, mind you, both of them. And how is the day saved when Buck was a assassin, he was a contract killer for years, and how does the day get saved? By a cat. Their cat gets in his car when he goes to find her and jumps down and saves the fucking day and claws someone's face off, and that's how they win to get out of being held at gunpoint. And then the epilogue, instead of like, they get married or whatever, but there's no marriage scene, nothing like that. The ending chapter is they're having a cat birthday party, and I just felt like that was so fucking stupid that this was straight out of a really bad Hallmark Lifetime movie. This was just such a waste of $12, and I'm disappointed because Anna Huang's writing is usually so good. I love the Twisted series. I didn't like Christian in the last one, but I liked the series. I liked every other book in this series except for King of Greed, because I felt like the character dynamics and the relationship in that one was very icky and toxic, and basically sending a message that you can be in a toxic relationship and it's totally okay. So this was disappointing because every other book besides that one was a hit for me. And the one before this was so good, I couldn't put that one down at all. King of Sloth was before this. And there was a scene where Sloane, spoiler, Sloane's goldfish dies. This woman that's so hard and stoic and cold and like nobody can hurt her, and her fish dies, and she says to the main male character, Xavier, like, or Javier, whatever, however you say it, she was like crying, and she's like, I couldn't keep this fish alive. Like, how am I supposed to keep myself alive? How am I supposed to give love to others? Like, I couldn't even keep the fucking goldfish alive, blah, blah, blah. And it was so raw and emotional, and you felt for that character. In this, it really felt like there was nothing going on. Ayana worked for a modeling agency, and she wanted to get out of it so bad, and then she ended up going behind the modeling agency's back to try to get out of it for this marriage of convenience with her friend. So that's what the whole plot is around. But then the modeling agent, like her boss, the head, the CEO, gives her the money that they owed her and then fires her. And then it was like this whole big thing, like, how could you fire me? Like, that's so awful, and like, I feel so bad, and blah, blah. And it's like, but girl, you wanted to leave. Like, so you can't feel that bad. It was just a lot of like back and forth of things not making any sense. The way I described it was, I read books to get away from reality. Like, usually books like this and anything else I read, like, would never happen in real life, ever, ever, ever. So when I read a book, I want it to be unrealistic, but in a way that I'm like, oh, like, that would be nice if, like, I had that. This was so far from unrealistic that it was, like, embarrassing. And again, it just felt like a really shitty Hallmark movie. And I don't know, it's just like, I would not recommend this book at all. If you like the series and you're worried about reading this one, just SparkNote it, go to Wikipedia, whatever, Goodreads, and read about it, and then go to the next one when that comes out. So, no, I would not recommend this. Okay, now the tangent is gone. I read Guild by Raven Kennedy. So, I gave this a 4 out of 5, 0 on the spice meter. This was just starting for the series, so there really was nothing like that. Smut scenes right in the beginning, right in the first 2 pages. Very, very graphic, but it wasn't in a way of romance. It was more in a way of like sexual assault type of deal, so that doesn't count for spice at all. And it wasn't like dark, it was just what it was. But I like this. It was a good starting off for the series. I like the story of like King Midas and the Golden Touch. I thought it was a really cool play off that story for this book, because that's kind of like a myth that you don't really hear about. You know about, but you don't really hear about that often. So it was really cool that she based the book off of that. I like the characters in this book too. Like, you can see the growth and the complexity of the characters, and you're not sure if you're rooting for King Midas, if you're rooting for the main character Oren, or like there was a pirate gang that showed up, and I kind of wasn't sure if this was going to be like a romantic partner, and then you come to find out like it's not, and so you don't really know who you're rooting for yet, which is, I like that because I like to be a little heartbroken when something happens. But I like that this says too on the back, like, this is the story of Oren. So it's her story, and it's not, from what I'm gathering, not something that's going to be 1,000% romantic build on. It's going to be her story and like how she survives being in a prison that she thought was normal, but it's really not normal. And I'm just really curious how the next one's going to go. Like, is like a shifty character, I don't know if he's good or not, and then this new character shows up, and there's Faye involved, which I was like, okay, like, that's a different twist. We have a Faye character that shows up at the end, and then we have King Midas's, like, concubines or consorts or whatever they're called. One of the things that kind of grossed me out, and I realized why she did it and why she wrote it that way, but she calls the consorts saddles because you ride them. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. But it's it's like a degrading term to the consorts and the women. So like, I understand why they did it, because it's the men in this book do not think women are anything but objects to have sex with and abuse and stuff. So I understand why she did that. It was just like, at first I was like, oh, it's icky, but I understand the purpose. But this was really good. I would recommend this to start. Again, I don't know how the rest of the books are. I know a lot of people love these books, so that's why when I got it, it was like, okay, I kind of trust the community, because they're all saying that they love it, and the covers are always so beautiful, and I know the last book just came out, so it's a reoccurring series that people love and enjoy. So I have to get my husband's take on it still, but this was mine. I would recommend it, and I'm excited for the next one. Leather and Lark by Bryn Weaver. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 with 2 out of 5 spice. I love Butcher and Blackbird, I read that a couple months ago. I love that book. That was so fun. It was really cool. The plot was really interesting and new. Unfortunately, this one, though, it just was kind of really slow. The slow burn with the romance was extremely slow, and nothing really happened until 3/4 of the way through, which I don't like. It was kind of hinting at something. We got Lachlan's point of view multiple times, and spoilers, he would say, like, oh, like, I'm falling for her, like, I think I love her, I like her, I don't want to not be around her and whatever, I want to protect her. And then we get to Lark's point of view, and she's like, yeah, he's okay, but he's kind of an asshole, and I don't like him, and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly it was a shift of like, oh, I love him. And it's like, unfortunately, that works in the movies sometimes, but in books, you have so much more time to really develop characters and plot and, like, get to know what's going on. So when you pull that whole, like, oh, I just love him out of nowhere, it's like, that's not realistic in any way. Even in a book, it just felt like it was out of left field, and you're like, oh, okay, you actually do care about him. Like, there were points where she was like, oh, I want to have sex with him, I want to know what it's like with him bending me over the table, like, but that's not the same as love. That's just having lustful thoughts. But again, this was like a marriage of convenience, forced marriage type deal, kind of like enemies to lovers, I would say, for this. So it was good, it just wasn't as good as the first one. The first one set such a precedent of being, like, funny and new, and this one was more, like, drama focused, so going from one to the other, I was like, oh, okay, like, it's a shift, but I'll deal with the shift. But it was still good. It was still enjoyable. Like, the characters were really good. You got to see returning characters. The one thing I would say is that I really did feel like the ending was out of left field. Again, spoilers. But the killer that was killing all these people that they're worried about, there was one chapter in the beginning of him setting up the plan. And you're like, oh, like, his name's the Phantom or something. You're like, oh, okay. And then you don't hear about him ever again. And it was very predictable in the way that you figured out who this character was, because he showed up in multiple scenes out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, why is this guy from Texas and Boston right now, like, getting leather from Lachlan's shop? So it was very predictable in that sense, but even at the end, when they're up against the killer, it was very quick. It was not drawn out, and it just kind of felt like it was such this build-up of where they had to be, and then it was totally done. And it was the brother of one of the serial killers that Butcher and Blackbird killed in the first book, and it was like, what does that have to do? Like, they justified it like, oh, you killed my brother, so I'm gonna kill your brother and sister, but it just didn't really, it was like, okay. I also feel like there were plot holes in the way of, like, Lark not opening herself up to Lachlan Foley, even though she's, like, admitting that she loves him so much, but, like, she didn't really tell him what happened in the college, of, like, why Sloane became the way she was, and what she did for Lark, and what Lark went through. They insinuated it, but they didn't really dive deep into her telling Lachlan and opening up those doors to him really knowing who she was. So I felt like the dynamic there was a little lost, because it really, to me, felt like it was just more like feelings of lust. Like, the first book, it was like friends to lovers, so it was like Butcher had Rowan had such a appreciation for Sloane and thought she was funny, and, like, they were really good friends, and they had this game going on, and he came to know her after, like, teaching her how to cook and calling her and, like, whatever, and then they became lovers, and it was that door opening of, like, okay, like, we're friends, I trust you. It just really felt like Lark didn't trust him, even in the end. So there's another book after this that I'll read, The Scythe and Sparrow, I think. I'm pretty sure it's about Rose and Fionn, whatever the last brother's name is. I think it's about them, I'm not sure, but I wonder if it's going to kind of dive into their story as well to kind of tie things up. I really hope so, because it just felt like a miss that it didn't fill any of these plot holes, but it was still okay. Again, I love the first book. If I had a way, I would just read the first one and not this one, but they're all connected, so. And the best for last, I just finished this one yesterday night, before my Bedazzle book club day. Ravensong by TJ Klune. So, I loved Wolfsong. I did a review on that last month, and my husband read it as well, and We both gave it a 5 out of 5. That book made me cry, like throw up. Like I was like such a mess from that book. And I give this one a 5 out of 5 as well. I gave it a 1 for spice because there's one scene, but honestly, I really feel like this series is a series in its own of like plot and romance and fantasy, that it doesn't need to drive the spice. We're such on like a weird thing that we have to have spice, and there was one scene here, one graphic scene, and this book isn't for kids, it says it's for adult readers, but it's one like 2-page scene, but it was like sweet, it was raw, it was emotional, it was to the point because of like where the characters were and how far they came to the conclusion of being in love. And that's why I thought it was just really sweet. It wasn't out of left field, you saw it coming, and it was like, okay, like this is them proving the love to each other. But Gordo is such a good character in this book. It was, you could see the progression that he went through. I'm so glad it showed the past to the present and then possible future, because I was wondering so hard in the first book, like, what did he go through that makes him hate everyone so much? And it shows, like, he was a different person when he was a kid, and then going through what he went through multiple times, it's like, holy shit, like, this is such a grounded, raw, complex character that is so emotional, but doesn't show his emotions. And Mark is just such a good other main character that, you know, you didn't see a lot of in Wolfsong because he was kind of in the background, but he stayed with Ox's pack in the middle when Joe left. So you got to see him in that way, but you didn't get to see him in the way of like his actual feelings. So I really liked this character as well. It was, you felt such heartbreak for these characters, like, why can't they just be together? Why can't they just get away from how they feel and just love each other? And it's so much more than that. It's so much harder than that. And of course you revisit the really sad things from Wolfsong that you're like, oh my god, seeing it from a different, someone else's perspective is so hard, because you already saw it from one perspective, but then seeing it from a family's perspective, it's like, holy shit, like, that is so sad. Like, TJ Klune just has a way of writing that's so heartbreaking but so beautiful, and like towards the end, I felt it again. I felt like I was there. I felt like I was with this pack and I was a part of them, and it's mind-blowing how he writes these books. Like, I had to hold back tears again. Like, the first book I really did cry, but this one I held it together because I was like, I can't cry at everyone. I can't. It was so beautiful. I was like struggling. I didn't want to finish it because I was so scared of some of the fates of some of the characters. I didn't want something to happen, and then I had to read that and like keep going. Like, I wouldn't be the same. But I pushed on because I was like, okay, this man has to write a fucking happy ending. Like, come on. It's not fair if you don't. But this opens up, you know, another plot at the end. It opens up another arc for what they're going to go through in Heartsong. So I'm really excited for that, and I 1000% would recommend this series. Like, it is just, if you don't care about like the spice really, like, it is just, it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful story. I 1000% recommend it to anybody. So those were my May reads. In June, I'm going to be reading Be Spelled, The Charlie Method, the sequel to the Book of Asriel, A Deal with the Elf King, and Blood and Honey, and much more. So check back next month, and we'll talk about June. Bye!